And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Oz Property Investors. How are we, gentlemen? Andrew, how are you, mate?
Excellent, mate. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's my pleasure. Steve Polisi, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm actually in Sydney for a change. I'm not on UK time. So it's not morning. It's actually night time for me.
Yeah, you look fresh. You look like
might be the floodlights I've got on me.
He does look fresh, doesn't he? He must have been in that
so
workout yesterday.
I love it.
It's because I'm the only person in Australia with a tan at the moment.
Yeah, and it's 6 a.m. in the UK, and you're just waking up, and while we're all going to sleep. Yeah. But I feel like it's a little taken over right now. Like, this is Oz Property Investors. It's usually just talking about residential stuff, but it's 2-1, and two commercial blokes on this, and it's a little bit scary. So I hope I can keep up.
Shut up, Joe. You bumped Jeff off this as well.
How good is this? Yeah. Late as usual, I see. Thank you. We had some technical issues, as we always do. This is not Oz Technical Facebook Live Professionals. It's Oz Property Investor Professionals. So, Andrew Bean, you have a bit of a quote of the week. So we always like to go off on quotes, and then we'll give you a bit of an introduction of who this man is in front of us. But what was your quote, mate?
Mate, my quote is actually from my boy Uncle G, Grant Cardone, and that's be obsessed or be average.
Okay. Give us an example of when you're obsessed.
Oh, that's a wrong question. Wrong question to ask you.
Is it?
About 6 years ago, I stumbled onto this thing called a real estate, and I've been obsessed ever since, and that's taken me down a few little rabbit holes. And I'm basically that's how I got here today.
I went in a bookstore once with Andrew, trying to show off like I'm going to be a published author soon. Yada yada. This is like a couple of years ago, and he literally walked past every property book. He's like, read that. Every Grant Cardone book, he's literally read the whole bookstore.
Yeah, I got a real thirst for just educating myself, a little while ago, and I decided that instead of like the biggest thing that probably has got me to where I am today is that I took control of my time, and like I did little things, like I stopped listening to music in the car and I start listening to audiobooks, podcasts and stuff. I would literally be like mowing the lawn and I'd be listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad in my ears, like doing shopping, any kind of mundane task where you don't need to be 100% there with your, cognitive ability. I'd literally turn that into learning time. And it's served me well so far. And I suggest, I could only recommend it.
Awesome. Yeah. The uncommon of the uncommons. I love that. Okay, cool. Steve, what is your quote of the week? What have you got, mate? Bit of a different one.
A bit of an interesting one from my idol. So this one actually comes from Andrew Bean, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit because I can't remember exactly what he said. He said to me about a year ago, if you're going to work on like a passion project or something to make money and put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, why not do it in a task that's actually going to make you a lot of money? So what I took from that is kind of like, there's no point stuffing about with a residential reno to make 15, 20 grand. When if you've got the capital and you can do something that makes 100, 200 grand, why not do that? It's the same amount of time and effort. Why not go for the bigger reward?
Yeah, I'm sold for that. That makes perfect sense. Like if you're going to put all, yeah, that guy must know a thing or two.
But it is because a lot of people will go out and they'll think small. Like say you're a barber, and we had this conversation the other day, Joe. There's a lot of smart barbers, and they go out there. They're always going to maximum make 50, 80 grand. And if they're really good and open up 2 or 3 things, they're going to make 150. Why not focus on a task where they can make bigger? They can make the 500 grand a year and something and scale it that way.
Yeah, well, especially if it's something that you don't enjoy. Like I have a lot of professional friends that earn, 150, 200K. And I'm like, you're a very smart intellectual person. You could easily run a business, but you're just happy to do something you hate when you could turn your passion into something that can make money for you, but you're just kind of stuck in that. They don't take action onto it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it takes just amount of the, brain power and time to take on a small goal, you might as well take on a massive goal that is life-changing for you and others. So that's kind of, where I've come from. And that's kind of, I didn't wake up like that. It's over quite a few years. I've had quite a mindset shift from, the things that I've been reading and the people I've been listening to. So
yeah. That's my quote right there.
That'll be next week's quote. Okay, well, actually, it's funny. This is similar to my quote of the week. Is if you set your goals ridiculously high and it's a failure, you will fail above everyone else's success, and that's done by James Cameron. Like, if you just kind of reach for the stars, you'll get the moon. So it's all kind of carrying a very similar theme. So bit of an introduction of what we're going to be covering off tonight. This is cracking the commercial code for storage units, self-storage. Steve, you've dealt with self-storage a little bit in your business. Andrew, you've just bought or in the process of buying a 4.6, and we'll go through the numbers a little bit, but as far as I remember, $4.6 million massive complex that has hundreds and hundreds of units in it. So we want to unpack what this means. We're going to go full deep into this topic. What we'll do, we'll jump into our sponsored ad, and then we'll dive straight into introducing Mr. Andrew Bean. Do it. The amazing thing with commercial property investing is that in most cases, it's cash flow positive from day one, which means that you can drive those profits towards paying down the debt. There are instances with commercial property investing where you can actually have the property pay itself off over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. With commercial property, you get massive net yields, so you can expect anywhere between 6 to 10%. And as we've seen in the current boom, these properties not only provide large cash flow, they do certainly grow wildly in value too. Now, with big rewards comes some risk, and this is why you should de-risk your investment as much as possible. And the way you do that is with expert due diligence. And this is why we highly recommend people hire professionals to help you along in your investing journey. Steve Polisi of Polisi Property is one such expert. Being a chartered mechanical and structural engineer in a past life, Steve draws on his analytical and mathematical skills to do that expert due diligence for you. With 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He's the guy you want in your corner, crunching the numbers and finding the best properties in the best locations, along with ensuring that you avoid the mistakes. Steve has actually even written the book on commercial property investing in Australia. And not only is it a bestseller, I believe it to be the most comprehensive in commercial property investing on the market today. He's been generous enough to give us a massive discount for our audience of 50%. So use the code OZPROP, click the link below, get a copy today, and start learning and getting on your commercial property investing journey. What a guy. What a guy that is.
The worst part is I know Andrew's going to shut this down and say, yeah, you can pay it off in 10 years, Steve. I can pay it off in 5.
It's a good ad for what we're the commercial takeover of tonight, so I like it.
Yeah, it's 100% commercial takeover. I think I'm in the wrong business. I might need some tips from you, Steve.
it is getting more interest. Like, that's the thing. Like, people that had no clue about commercial, now I can bring it up, and they actually know quite a lot about it. They know about leases and who pays what. It is getting more awareness, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, the session is not just about commercial property. It is about the one and only Andrew Bean. So for you guys that don't know who this gentleman is, the reason why commercial property is out and about so much more is probably because of this man. He is the host of Commercial Property Show, founder of CP Data, which I believe stands for Commercial Property Data, co-founder of Commercial Property Capital, founder of Australia-wide Storage Solutions. I don't think it's solutions, is it? Founder of Developer Life, which is a boutique commercial services business. I hope I've said that right. And father of 2, which is amazing, and founder and podcast creator as well. And you currently work for the largest defense company in Australia. You're doing all of this stuff. When do you get time to relax? And how do you read all these books?
Well, as I said, I just take advantage of, doing mundane things to, listen to content. You're surprised how much you can get done in a day if you just, don't sit on the couch and watch TV, or you just don't listen to music in the car. Like literally, if you're driving, it's not unusual in Sydney to drive half an hour to your job, right? So there's 2 hours per day you could be educating yourself. Like literally just listen to an awesome audiobook, listen to Steve's book, listen to a podcast, like get yourself educated and move forward in life. Like that's what I'm all about. So
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's take it back to the beginning. Like how did you get started into commercial property? What got it there?
well, I mean, we were buying our first home. It was a live-in renovator, and I got obsessed with real estate in general. And then we ended up buying that property. And then I just never stopped, wanting to learn. And I really got a passion for it and started to be getting obsessed with it. And I wanted to, and back then I was just basically like everyone else thinking about negative gearing, because that was the only kind of content around back then. And I profoundly remember going to one of a seminar where, one of these top buyers agents was presenting, and they're talking about their strategy. And it was literally like buy 4 houses over the next 5 years or 10 years, then buy another 5, and the first 5 pay down the second 5 to live off the cash flow. And I remember thinking to myself, well, if cash flow is the goal, then why don't we just start with cash flow? So I started looking at ways, and I didn't know about commercial property then, that it was really cash flow positive. So I started looking at ways of how to actually do this. And I'm reading books like, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Grant Cardone's book, Am I Being Too Subtle by Sam Zell, the best real estate investor of all time. And they're talking about doing cash flow first and actually appreciation second. So they invest for cash flow and not for capital growth. And I'm just remember thinking to myself, if these guys can do it and they're having huge success, then, I need to be doing that. And I stumbled on a really great property course, which was James Dawson's property course. And, the rest was history there. And then I really dug into that, and I realized that there was no kind of podcast or anything like that was talking about like real, like current market conditions and education. There are a couple of commercial property podcasts, but they were really old and outdated. So I really just wanted to jump in there, and I just like talking about property, so it was like kind of like a marriage made in heaven. Like, just, I could talk to people like Steve about property, and, we could start trying to help, everyone else and also educate myself. And like, that was really, I made it for myself really, because I just really love it.
It sounds sort of like Ozprop Joe.
Sounds like Ozprop. Sounds like, And this is what we were chatting about a couple of days ago, is like the reason you created your podcast was so you could sit down for an hour to people you won't necessarily be able to get access to. And have your audience have the opportunity to listen to them as you unpack their secrets and top tips and tricks and stuff like that. That James Dawson course, is that still around today?
Oh yeah, it's still around. It's still a great course. I highly recommend it. James Dawson's a very, very well-known commercial property investor. Been in the game for 30 years. Another guy that I got access to really early up was Chris Lang. He's been in the game. He's literally has the most experience in buyer's agency in Australia in commercial property, 40 plus years. These kind of things were huge. And I was interviewing these guys, twice a month, and talking to them about anything I wanted. It was really amazing. I cannot recommend, building and creating your own podcast enough. It's been life-changing so far.
Yeah. And I don't say this lightly, Andrew's probably the most well-rounded commercial investor in Australia now because of that podcast, because he's got hundreds of hours of talking to experts. Like, you can read some books and articles, but not the same as talking to someone for an hour or two, multiple times. How many podcast episodes you got now?
I think we're about almost 60 or something like that. But at the start of the actual podcast, I was literally doing four episodes an interview. But then there was a logistical nightmare of actually doing 4 different interviews and then getting it all together in one. So each interview was like 10 minutes a piece. So it ended up, slowly going to 2 interviews a show, and then now it's just 1 interview a show, where we probably get deeper into the commercial property subject, and we unpack more stuff like we did with your podcast, Steve, where it's, Steve, the podcast that Steve and I did together would honestly have to be, and I'm probably biased, but it'd be one of the most educational podcasts on commercial property ever, so.
What's it called?
What's it called, Stevie?
Commercial Property Explained, I think. Commercial Property
Commercial Property Investing Explained.
Oh, God. Yeah, that little handball was fumbled a little bit there.
Very fumbled.
No, that's literally hours on each topic. Like leases, there's 3 hours, and then we'd compress it into all the must-know data and stuff. But yeah, but even like when I went on your podcast originally, Andrew, there's 1 hour chat, we probably spoke 5-10 hours post, like for the coming months before I went on it again. So the knowledge you have is just ridiculous, which is interesting why you've chosen self-storage, which we'll go into today.
That's it.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest thing I want to cover off. Really, I want to go high level and then keep drilling down into self-storage. So I want to understand exactly what self-storage is, how it works, why it's actually worthwhile considering, how to actually find a deal, how to research a market and location, how to come up with the valuations, why is it better? Because my biggest thing with this space is that it's not a commercial property, it's an operational business that you're buying. So it'd be cool to unpack that as well. But can you give high level overview of what exactly self-storage is and kind of explain it for the audience?
Yeah, well, I can assure you, Joe, that it is definitely a commercial property. That's definitely what it is. But yeah, it's a self-storage facility where, the reason why that I picked it is it ticks all the boxes for me. I like the kind of business where I have asset where I have lots of buttons and levers to pull to add value. Self-storage has that. I like the idea of doing something at scale. So if you're putting a self-storage facility next to a industrial asset that has 1 major tenant, the risk of vacancy in that industrial commercial asset is extremely high. Whereas a self-storage facility, if you're doing it at scale, so this particular property that we're under contract for and we're almost in due diligence, there's 104 self-storage units, and there's 8 commercial tenancies. So if you have a self-storage facility and you have 100 units, right, they're month-to-month leases, and people might say, gee, that's risky. A month-to-month lease is risky. And you're right. A month-to-month lease, it is risky if you have 1. But if you have 100, that's not actually as risky. It reduces the risk significantly, because it's very unlikely that 100 storers are going to come in on the same weekend and take all of their stuff up and have complete vacancy. It's almost unheard of. It's one of those things that self-storage, for me, it's a very, very sticky business. So for instance, if I'm, I actually am a storer at Storage King in Sydney, so I'm a customer as well. That's been pretty handy too, to see how they operate. But they actually the self-storage facility was owned by Hills Self-Storage originally. And I was there because I was a price-conscious tenant, because I wanted to get the cheapest price, right? Yeah. Storage King came in and bought that property. And I'm saying to myself, I saw they bought it, and I'm like, I'm going to get a rate rise pretty soon. Lo and behold, in a month, I got about a 10% rate rise. But because I didn't want to hire a ute, I didn't want to go and waste the whole weekend moving all my stuff down the road to a facility that was $10 cheaper a month. I just wore the rate increase, because it's only $10 a month. It's not a big deal. And when you're raising rates at scale, so say you have 100, what if you have 300? What if you have 500? What if you have 1,000? If you have 1,000 units over multiple facilities and you're raising them each by 10%, or even just say $10, each dollar in commercial property adds up. Like it's literally dollar. The dollar can be valued like huge value to you because it's a commercial property in its nature is traded on a capitalization rate. And that is in essence the power of commercial property, that it's traded on the rental income. And if I can go into a business, right? So if I'm looking for underperforming self-storage facilities that are wildly under rented, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I do.
Yeah, can you talk to the types of self-storage that there are? Because like when I think of self-storage, I just think of the big storage kings that have 1,000 lots throughout them. But are there different types, smaller scale, larger scale? Like what are the ones that you're focusing on? And then go into the details on that. Would be cool.
Well, I'm focusing on the ones that are underperforming businesses. So there's not really one that I only like. I personally like the drive up old tin shed self-storage personally, but that's just my preference. I just like that kind of facility. But it'd be unusual to find a multi-story high quality self-storage facility that's under rented, because they've only really just been developed by your National Storage King, Kennards. Those guys are main REITs. They're big time operators. They don't like make mistakes. Whereas I'm looking at like small time players, mum and dad operators, because in self storage, it's about 70% of self storage facilities are run by mum and dad operations that have usually held the asset for 5, 10, 15 years, and they're not running it like a professional business where they're trying to drag every single dollar out of it. They'll have what's called a static pricing. So I'll have one pricing sheet for the whole of all of the units, and then they'll have that for ever, or they'll have it maybe change it at the start of the year. It doesn't matter how full they are or how vacant they are, they'll still charge the same price. And that's the big difference between a professional operator like your National Storage or your mum and dad operator, in a more like second tier market.
70% are owned by mum and dad operators. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought it would all be the big guys.
Yeah, and the nature of self-storage too is it's really come from a junkyard industry. Like it's really one of the newest types of assets out there. So like back 30, 40 years ago, no like big REITs were actually after self-storage. But now in America there are so many REITs going after self-storage, and it's really come into its own in its sense where it's a very, very recession resistant asset. So, in times of COVID, self-storage did really well. They didn't see any, and actually got better, So if you literally called any self-storage facility across Australia in the last 2 years, I'd be pretty surprised if they had more than 5% vacancy. Like literally,
Wow.
like it's done really well, because there's actually a rental shortage as well across Australia of rental properties.
Everything.
So people need places to store stuff in the interim of when they're moving to. So there's a lot of I'll go through them later on, but there's a lot of different driving factors that are pointing in the direction of self-storage being a great asset for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years.
Also, during lockdown, who calls up their storage? Be like, actually, I'll go pick up all that stuff I've got in storage, even though I'm locked in my 2-bedroom apartment. Like, it's not. It's going to be.
Yeah. It's more likely to move stuff out into your shed.
So like, and also like with working from home movement, the lifestyle movement, housing affordability and wages and stuff, inflation, people can't live in really big houses anymore. It's harder to buy a house that's, a big house. So people downsize, and what do? They go to the storage facility to take out all the junk from that spare room so they can work from home, and not have to go to work each day in a capital city. So there's so many online spending as well is crazy. That's why industrial property in general has had such a big boom, because people are trying to store stuff for eBay, Amazon, like all this kind of stuff where people just buy things. It's easy to get finance on pay up after pay. for
What
instance.
I was surprised at, Andrew, is a lot of businesses are the tenants as well. I was in my head always just thought mum and dad clients. Businesses actually have a big portion of the self-storage.
Yeah, that's right. So, like for instance, in Adelaide, in the area that we're purchasing this facility, there's literally no industrial properties for people to move to. So they have to use some kind of secondary storage, and also businesses, especially startups, they like the nature of the month-to-month lease. So, signing a 12, 24-month lease can be a bit scary if you're a startup. But, the online retailer that is, selling things through eBay, as I said, they might just get a self-storage unit, like a 6x3 unit, stack of some shelves in there and really operate out of that storage facility, especially, online. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, talking about the pricing model. So what you're saying is people static just say $70 a month, and then that's it. They never increase the price. Are you saying you get them in low and you might get them in at $60 a month, and then in 9 months' time you increase the rent, and then in 9 months' time you increase the rent, and then in 9 months' time you increase the rent, and you keep adding it on until they leave? Or like how does it kind of, how do you maximize the revenue through a pricing structure?
That's part of the model. So we're going to be using, and the big players use a thing called dynamic pricing. So it's based on the supply and demand of the area, and particularly in your actual self-storage facility. So if I have 10 units available, say they're 6x3, and I'm renting them out for, say, $500 a month when I have 10 vacant, if I start filling up and I have 5, 6, 7 fill up, and I've only got three left, then my price essentially has to go up as well, because there's more demand for that unit. So I might be charging $550, $600, $700, and it's not easy to do. Like it is easy to do, but mum and dad operators, they're not running it like they want to get the most out of it. They're just happy to be full. So if you talk to a mum and dad operator and they're like, oh yeah, we've been full for the last 3 years, that's what they hang their hat on. Well, realistically, if you're full, you're not doing the rate increases properly. You shouldn't be full. You need vacancy to be able to really maximize the facility. So if you are full,
hotels do something similar, don't they, Andrew? Like if there's 1 or 2 rooms left, they charge a premium to get people in. When they've got heaps vacancies, they do the deals to get people in.
That's right. Yeah, it's exactly right. So a good example is, say, on an airplane, where you potentially, when the airplane's empty and it's the start of when it's being booked, you can get a flight for, I don't know, whatever price it is. But as that flight gets more and more booked up, the prices are all changing. So everyone on an airplane pays a different price for their seat. Even though if I'm sitting next to Steve on the airplane in business class, like he came from the UK, he's paid, I don't know, $2,000, and I probably paid $3,000 because I'm a sucker,
You wait to the last minute.
It was 6,000, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Oh, pounds or
boy, bloody hell, those pounds treat you real well. So one of the things that I find, like one of the questions I have is, do you have staff on site? Like, is there someone that sits there and does the operational side of things, or is it just like, how's it work? How does it work operationally, like on that front?
So it really depends. If you're thinking about a business, usually the biggest operational drag on the business is the staff. Like that's the thing that costs the most. With a self-storage facility, depending how big the facility is, big or small, you might only need one person to operate it. And that's, I'm saying that as a caveat. So if the facility is like returning less than, say, $80,000, $100,000 maybe, then that facility really needs to be automated, and it needs to be manless. So you can actually do that facility with good profit. But if you're, getting up to, 200,000, 300,000 of income, then you can support a manager on site. And a manager on site really is they're selling a product, where self-storage is a product. It's a box. It has 3 walls and a roller door, and its product fit into that marketplace. So if you get the sizing wrong when you're developing a self-storage facility, and say you develop, 4.5 square meter units or something like that. So say you're doing all 6x3s, but the market actually wants 3x3s. If you get that wrong, then you're still going to be vacant no matter what. So you need to find the right product, and it's called a unit mix for that actual market to actually go into that market. And what the actual operator does is they're a salesman as well. So there's a box shop. So a lot of the time, a great value add for a self-storage facility is, if they're not selling boxes, locks, packaging, tape, and things like that, is to add those ancillary products in and add in another line of revenue, because it can be huge. Like, Joe, if you come into a self-storage facility, right, and you've got all your stuff with you, and you want to book a unit, and I say, okay, do you have a lock? You're like, no. I'm like, okay, well, we can buy one for $15 from my box shop. Are you going to run down to Aldi or Woolies or something to buy another lock? No, you're just going to pay the $15, straight up, because it's easy, So there are a lot of things that you can do and sell in the box shop to make it a lot more of a retail type of asset. And self-storage in its nature is somewhat a retail business, because you're selling products.
I actually had that similar, Andrew. I went to a self-storage. I went to hire a moving truck because I was moving house, and the pickup was actually at a self-storage, and for that exact reason, because if you're putting stuff in storage, cool. Yeah. Here's the truck. Here's the boxes. Here's the trolley. Add.
Yeah, that's it.
There's a new line item. Usually, we'll jump to questions at the end, but I thought this one tied in quite nicely. We kind of covered off a little bit who runs the business, but who signs up the tenants, who cleans. This sounds like buying a business, not just an investment property. What am I missing?
So you're 100% correct. Self-storage is a business. It can be run like a passive investment, don't get me wrong, because you could literally throw a real estate agent in and get them to sign up people and get them in through the leases and stuff, and they go to their office and sign up leases. You can, but you're not actually doing the best, you're not putting your best foot forward to get the most out of that asset. So self-storage in its nature is a business, and that's why I like it, because it will deter people as well. So not everyone wants to run a business, but because of technology now, particularly a software called Storman, it's all automated. Like, you can literally go online, you can see the vacancy that we have, you can then book your unit online, and then you can also get a PIN code sent to your email when you get there, and you can get into the self-storage facility unmanned. You don't actually have to be manned. That's why self-storage facilities can run 24/7. You can find your unit, put your stuff in, put your own lock in, and leave, and never talk to anyone. So there is a business part of it, but it's a very, very easy business. The only thing that you do need to do in self-storage and have a manager or someone close to it is, when someone moves out, you do need to be able to turn that unit around as quick as possible, because that's just money on the table. So you need, usually in a self-storage facility, you'll have the tenant actually sweep out as part of their lease. So they'll sign a storage agreement that says, if you don't sweep out, then we're going to charge you like an extra $15 or something like that. Take it from your bond. But you just need someone to check that and make sure that it's done, so you can turn the unit around, get it back on site, so you can get it rented straight away.
I even saw one, I think it was in America, Andrew, where they just take a photo of it and then send it, and then that's enough.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So what's the kind of buy? Well, actually, one question is, you can buy fully automated sites, or you can create your own fully automated. You don't have to be there. You just need to call someone up when that needs to be cleaned, or the computer can just email someone to say, hey, go over there, clean it. It'll be 50. You get $50 or $20 or $30 or whatever it is. So you can have completely unmanned sites.
Yeah, so you can, exactly. You can. It's almost 100% unmanned, but there is an element that you need to have someone checking that people aren't leaving junk around in the walkways and the driveways. There is that. But what do you actually do? So this, you'll be buying software that will totally map out the facility, right? So it's a very, very good software. It's called Storman. And then you'll also have cameras literally everywhere. I could literally lock you out of your unit from home from my mobile phone if I wanted to. So say for instance you don't pay, then I just go boop, you know, you don't get to go into your unit. I've got your stuff, and then you get notifications on you have to get up to amount of payment. So it's literally can be almost 100% automated and viewed and managed remotely. And that's what I'm going to be doing. We're going to have a manager on site for this particular site, and for the reason we want to sell stuff in the box shop to actually increase the value significantly.
Yeah,
but
so that person's
yeah.
value is going to outweigh. Having a salesperson there, you pay him 60K, 70K, you're going to sell 200K worth of equipment and boxes.
It might not be 200K, but like it adds huge value. If you have a great salesman there and you're saying they come in and they say, I want a 3x3 9 square meter unit. And then they go through what they have and like, actually, you probably need a 3x6. So that can be huge upsells. It's like upsell. It's like, you know, if you go on to any kind of retail shop, they have one-click upsells, or they're trying to increase the amount of money in the cart of your checkout. And that's what it is. If you do that consistently over time, then it adds huge value to the bottom line. And that's what it's all about. We're doing this to make money, and every dollar counts, literally, in commercial property. It's based on a capitalization rate.
Yeah,
so one thing I was
going to say, it's worth pointing out, Andrew's buying a very big self-storage facility. He's not buying the little one in Tamworth with 8 tenants. He's buying a quite a large one. So the business side does make sense.
No, it definitely has to be at scale, you know. So as Steve said, like an 8 unit one, like although it could be okay, but it's not going to give you the low risk. Like the multiple tenancies gives you the low risk factor. Like having one tenant, you got to think about it like this. Who's the next in line to pay the mortgage? If it's a big conga line, if I'm getting pretty close to that mortgage payment in that conga line of having to pay it, then that's more risky. If I'm way back, there's way less risk in that. And that's what you're trying to do. You want to stack up as many tenants as possible so you have a lower risk to actually, be paying that mortgage or paying the debt. So,
yeah. And operationally, operating a 10-unit complex and a 100-unit complex, well, maybe a 50-unit complex is probably not too dissimilar, right? Like there would be a degree where managing a 2-unit complex would be just as hard as managing a 10, and a 10 would just be as hard as managing a 20.
Yeah, well, you need to put the software in place to do the larger scale. Realistically, managing 10, you could do it on a paper and ledge, and a lot of mum and dad operators still do that. So those are the type of businesses that you want to take from being 100% offline, bringing them online, and you can create huge value.
Yeah. And a question I had is, if people, like, you know, in what's that auction thing? So if you lock someone's storage unit out, the question I've always had is, do they look in the locker beforehand? Because on the show, they make it look like they don't look in the locker, but I reckon they do. Give me the answer.
Storage Wars really made self-storage famous in America. But I believe I have watched the show, and I do enjoy it. It tickles me. But they unlock, because with a low technology self-storage facility, if someone doesn't pay, you have to overlock the lock. So it's like a red lock that they put over the actual unit, and that signifies they haven't paid. So if they come in and there's 2 locks on it, you can't actually get in. So when they're actually going to do that auction, they cut one off, the storage lock, and then they already have the key for the overlock. But there is a site in Australia called iBid on Storage, and it's all online. It's actually a really cool site. Storage facilities like Kennards, National Storage, all the big players, they put their delinquent tenancies on there, and they take a picture and they itemize everything on there. And you can literally bid whatever you want. They'll give you I think there's a base value that they try and sell it at. But you can get some I've heard of some people of getting some good finds.
The pickers, how good.
Yeah, the pickers. Yeah.
There's a question here that's
going to numbers soon, Joe, because there's a lot of questions about examples and that. We've already got 40 minutes in.
What unit volume does Andrew see a break-even point? Maybe that's gonna jump into the number side of things. So actually, do you want to jump into your numbers now, and we'll probably cover this off?
Yeah, sure.
So
we can do that. I mean, I do have to premise that saying that this particular financial projection is very numbers heavy, and it's just the nature of the actual investment requires a lot of information. So we'll try and not get too stuck in the numbers, but we'll just see where we go.
Okay, cool. We're sharing the screen now, so just jump into what you got, and then can you zoom in on the Excel or the Google Sheets?
Okay, hang on.
So just Command plus.
Command.
Yeah.
How's that?
Okay. So what are we looking at here, mate?
So this is the actual financials for the facility that we're buying in Adelaide right now. So we're currently buying it for 4.6 million in Adelaide.
Do you want to show a few pictures, Andrew, first up, just so you get a bit of a gauge of kind of scale?
Yeah, well, I was thinking that we should probably go to the slide deck first and then go to the numbers so you can understand what you're doing. Should we do that instead?
Yeah,
jump on in, mate.
Okay.
Jump on in.
Can you guys see that?
Perfect.
All right. So this is the actual facility that we're buying. It's a very, very large lot. It's 15,000 square meters. The one thing that is the most important about any kind of self-storage facility is the location. The location has to be right because it's the one thing about the facility that you absolutely cannot change. So this particular facility is on a main road. It's on the road just coming away from Adelaide going to Gawler. And the particular road gets about 40 to 50,000 cars drive past it every day.
Yep.
So the actual location is extremely good. Like that's really the main draw card. And what we actually like about this is that it's not just self-storage, it's also got a commercial aspect as well. So there are 8 tenancies, and two of those are vacant right now. So we have long-term leases and 104 month-to-month leases as well. So
can you explain that 8 tenants? Because I'm confused. You've got 104 units, but 8 tenants?
So can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
So part of this is self-storage and part of it is actual commercial assets. So in this particular long building, that's all self-storage. And what the current owners have done is they've retrofitted the warehouses to be fitted with self-storage along here. And they've just slowly gone along. So it's self-storage along here to here to here to here. So that's all the self-storage here, right? These other warehouses, this is a warehouse. This has got an industrial tenant. And this has got these 4 shops here. They're bulky goods retail. So this is actually a furniture shop. This is a curtain shop. Oh. And this is a animal rescue charity shop. We've also got a vacancy here in this particular warehouse. And this is MJ Mechanicals. This is a mechanic shop. And this car yard is where one of the main parts of the development is going to be happening. And that car yard has since been vacant and they actually moved next door along here, which is quite funny. But that's the aerial view. As I said, it's a huge site. So, and it also has multi-street access as well. So we'll be developing back here and we can also make an entrance here or an exit here and then have flow-on effects where you flow through the site. So that's the aerial view. Now, as I said, this is the current self-storage at the moment. So what the owners have done, it's very common in self-storage, is to just add in containers. Like if, for instance, we were absolutely not able to get our DA approved for development, then look at the room on there and just think about how many containers I could fit on that site. Containers don't value up as well but it's still the cash flow play. So it's still a very, very good secondary option. Excuse me. And then the other thing about this particular site is that a lot of it actually is warehouses. So say for some reason, something crazy happened where self-storage just dissolved, like it just totally shut down. No one wanted to use it anymore. Well, these are actually warehouses that have been converted to self-storage. So I could convert them back to an industrial use, giving me that, another way to make the site extremely profitable. So in red here, you can see that these are the development areas that we're planning on developing. This particular, I'm just now going through some current pictures of the site. So as you can see here, this is the bulky goods retail part. It's a very, very old building, very, very run down. And that's what we actually like. Like in general, I'm looking for rundown, shabby properties that I have lots of problems and have problems that I know how to fix. Because the more problems you can find, the more money that you can make in property in general. So someone might look at this property and go, gee, it's a bit of a junkyard dump. And they're probably right. But that's where the money is. Like that's where you make huge returns, is taking really, really low grade assets and converting them into a higher grade B, A grade asset. And that's really where the opportunity is with a lot of self-storage. And in general, across South Australia, the grade of industrial assets are this grade. So it's not like this is totally out of joint with the current market. So this is the actual self-storage piece. This is the original self-storage they put in the long building. You can see it's just really shabby. It just there's so many things.
Yeah, I thought you would drive up. I thought you would drive up to it and you would put all your stuff in the car. But it looks like you would walk up this.
Yeah, these are all swing doors and it's all indoor storage. So the development that we're going to be doing is going to be drive-up storage, and you can command a higher return for those, a higher rate per square meter. But the particular storage we've got now is is swing door that's been converted from an industrial warehouse. So this is the oldest stuff they have on site. This is the newer stuff that they've converted in the last year. So you can see it looks a lot better. But you can still improve this. You could put a nice coating on the floor. You could have some kind of color coating on the doors to make it look a bit more, vibrant. But there are a lot of things you could do to make it a lot better facility.
It's worth pointing out, Andrew, it's low cost to put those in as well. Like you're not spending hundreds of thousands like you are building a whole building. It's fairly cheap in the grand scheme of things for your return.
That's right. And like once you get the DA approval to actually convert it, the site, then you can pretty much keep on converting whatever you've got under there. So that's what they've basically done, is they've just spent money converting half of a warehouse and then waited, got the cash together and converted the rest. And I believe that they've actually installed this themselves. So it wasn't even like, it's not like difficult to install. It's very, very easy to install. And it just, it really makes sense from a business operational point of increasing your bottom line.
So. Do you know who the typical types of tenants are for those kind of walk-in smaller ones?
Yeah, so the majority of the tenants that are there have been there for quite a long time. There are people that live around in the area. There are some businesses that also have long-term tenancies, but majority of them are just your local punter that needs a bit more room in his house, and they're just storing junk, because literally it's just junk. It's just things that, like, your kids have the sentimental value of things that your kids had from their bedroom when they were young and things like that. The sentimental value piece as well is really powerful for the things that we want to keep and that have value to you, but realistically they have no monetary value. So
you need a DA to be able to put those sliding door ones up, or you can just put how does that?
You need a DA to operate as a self-storage facility on the site. But once you have that DA in place to operate the business from council, then you can keep on improving and adding in and converting existing warehouses that you have on site.
But don't these guys already have that? Like,
it's approval for the business, Joe. It's like if if he decides to run a cafe on the site, he needs to get approval for the cafe.
Yeah, so it's not, you can't just throw up a building once you have the business approval, but the operational approval is what you need from council, because there's obviously different zones in South Australia, and this is in a rural zone. So, you know, they've had this self-storage facility running for many, many, many years, and the actual DA to run it is grandfathered in as well. So it's one of those things that it's once you've got it, you can't lose it unless you actually shut the business down.
So you don't really need a DA because the DA is already there, or
we do need a DA to develop new NLA, but net lettable area. So the warehouses that are here, where are
they? Think do an extension on your house, Joe. I'm going to do an extension.
Yeah. Okay.
So these are warehouses. This isn't self-storage, but these three are, right?
Yeah.
And that's half of the warehouse that's been
okay. So what are the future plans? What is it gonna? What are the? I saw you had some drawings there. I'm excited to see those.
Yeah. So I mean, this is where you enter the self-storage facility, and as I said, it's very, very common to throw in some containers because they're reasonably cheap. You don't actually need any kind of approval to put down containers on your site at all because it's a movable object. So you can start increasing cash flow then. And they've also got a very, very large element of room to have a capacity for caravans, cars, and things like that. And people actually bring their own container and drop it on the site as well. So it's not just all business owned. People will have a container, they need somewhere to put it, and they bring it to the site and they use it as a self-storage unit as well. So it's quite interesting.
One of the common ones I see there is people moving overseas. So people like me, they fill up their container, they send it back, but then before they come back, they travel for 6 or 12 months. So they just dump it at a self-storage site.
Yeah, that's it. So these are the proposed plans that we've got for the actual, these are the original plans for the site. Don't take any notice of the stages because they've changed at the moment. So you can see this is the original buildings. The blue and the creamish color and the pink color are new builds. So this is the general thing that we're taking to council at the moment for the development, which is currently getting assessed.
Jeez. Amazing. Utilizing that site far out.
Yeah, there is not much space for anything else. So what are the different colors? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So where's the residential, maybe not residential, the sales space?
You mean the office, the showroom? So the original showroom is here, but we're actually, because they're going to have an entryway here, we're going to move the office, the showroom here. So you can see who's entering at all times, and you're the main part of the site, not all the way in the corner over here. So you've got to remember that in mum and dad operated facilities, the showroom is usually really drabby and terrible. Like this particular showroom is, it's not a nice sales floor, So if you can create a really, really nice environment that is really professionally done, looks neat and clean. And what a good tip is always to offer free water and offer free popcorn, just something that they can eat while you're on site. Because I know I've used for self-storage facilities quite a lot, and it's usually an all-day event getting your stuff and moving into the facility. And you just get a bit hungry, you need some water. And if you're the type of business that's offering people food and water, it's only going to come back to you in good things. So that's kind of the idea behind it, is having a really nice showroom and treating the customers right.
So how many people were managing it before? So exclude the commercial assets that you've got on there that aren't storage units, but how many people are managing this storage unit currently? And then how many people will be managing this new one?
So the current operators have a part-time staff. They actually have three self-storage facilities in Adelaide. One of them is unbuyable because of the land is like it's next to a mine, and it's totally you can't build anything new on it, so you just can't buy it. Another one was a smaller facility than this. And we didn't feel that it was a better opportunity, and this was the real main opportunity. And what actually happened with this site was that I found this. The original owner was selling this direct to owner, so they were selling it on no agent business, right? So I called him back last year in November, and I'm talking to him, and he wouldn't give me any financials, any kind of like information on the site. And so like I'm like, well, how do you want me to buy it if I don't understand what the opportunity is? He's like, no, it's okay. Just I'll give you the basic numbers, but like the information that you require on a self-storage facility is like it's a Bible of stuff. Like you need profit and losses, you need 3 years profit and losses. You need so many different documents, like it's tenancy agreements. It's huge. And what I actually basically did was, well, like I can't understand the opportunity. So how can I buy this? And I actually didn't call him back to actually look at it. But then I found this other site on one of the business portals, and I called up the business broker, and I was talking to him about it. And he said, yeah, we've actually got this other bigger one as well that you might be interested in. And I was like, oh, okay. And he told me about it. And I was like, I know that site. And he's like, yeah, okay. And then, so this particular property was off market when I bought it because they were about to list it, but they didn't list it. And we basically got in before anyone else really got to market, and they had a crack at it because it was listed. It was going to be listed for 5 million. And we came in at 4.6 and we got the job done. So,
wow. So you've taken it from how many units to, I mean, you've what, 5x, 6x the amount of numbers of units there? Like,
yeah, well, we don't have the actual unit mix set in stone at the moment, because what I've actually done, Joe, is throughout all of my travels with interviewing people and with the commercial property show, I've built up a consultancy team of self-storage experts. So these are people who were at the forefront of self-storage when it first became big, so we've got, people like Jason Keane, who is a original business operating manager for Storage King, and he built the Storage King brand. He was, really instrumental in building the Storage King brand. We have a valuer that only does value self-storage facilities.
right.
I've got, people like who are the operational managers who have worked for huge facilities and filling them up. So we've got about
just kind
4
of
or 5
out the mix.
Yeah, and we actually got a turnkey self-storage developer where they can actually develop the whole thing for us, turnkey price. And they're the last self-storage turnkey developer in Australia. And they've really got a handle on the market. And the person that actually put this plan together, StoreCAD, they are the only architecture design company that does specifically self-storage. So you can imagine like the stranglehold that they have on that particular market, like industry. So it's crazy. But all of these guys literally have, 18, 20 plus years in the game. And those are the types of consultants that are on our team that we're leaning on to make sure that we're not doing anything wrong. Like, you can learn as much as you want, but until you've actually been on site and you're managing it, like, it's a whole different ball game. And that's why we're relying on expert consultants to make sure we're not making any stupid mistakes.
Yeah, well, you're hiring. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You're messing around with, like, you're turning it from what, like 5 little sheds into 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 15, 20 20 large lots of units. You don't want to mess it up. And same with the inflow and the outflow. Like those type of decisions must be very difficult to make, but it's cool to see that you're not just taking it all on your own shoulders. I'm interested about talking about the numbers. I want to see how this worked previously,
awesome,
before it's subdivision and cut up. And then let's talk about what your plans are with it. But while you're getting those details up, we'll jump into our next sponsored ad, and then we'll jump right into it.
Fantastic.
Let's do it. This live session is sponsored by Scott Agate from Hello House. Scott has created the world's first property negotiation as a service business. So what does that mean? Well, let's think about it. When was the last time you negotiated on anything over $100, let alone a property that is going to be one of the biggest investments of your life? The vendor, they have a trained negotiator on their side in the form of a real estate agent. That's kind of like you stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson after never training a day of boxing in your life. These guys are trained professionals, and that's what they do day in and day out. And this is what Hello House does every single day as well. They negotiate on property to get the best buy price from the real estate agents. Scott Agate, he's the expert negotiator. He has been in this industry since 1995. He owned and operated 3 Bell franchises. Scott was the guy that was teaching these real estate agents all these agent games. He knows all of their tricks. Having him on your side is going to give you a massive unfair advantage and literally save you tens of thousands of dollars. Unlike other ways of purchasing property, Scott's incentives are aligned with you, the buyer, meaning the more money he saves you, the more money he makes, which is what you want. You need to have those incentives aligned. Scott has kindly offered our group a massive discount on the retainer fee for his service. So if you're looking to buy your next home or investment property, click the link below to get in touch. Easy peasy. Okay, cool. Well, let's jump into some of the new stuff that you're doing, and then jump into the numbers and spreadsheets. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm assuming that you guys can see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just wanted to just finish off that the slide deck. Basically giving you everyone a list, an idea of what it will actually look like when we develop it. So this is kind of self-storage facility is a high quality, beautiful looking self-storage. And these are just a few render designs that are potentially possible for the actual site. So jumping into the numbers.
I was going to ask that before, Andrew. I imagine like street signage is really important because that's where you get a lot of the mum and dad kind of clients, because they're going to drive past and it's just going to plant the seed when they get home. Okay, we need to put that in storage. There's one right there.
Yeah, so probably one of the things that I haven't mentioned yet, Steve, is that with a self-storage facility, you're not just selling something on land, like it's not like a physical asset. You also have an online space as well, which is a huge part of self-storage, because typically you'll be getting your customers from a 5 to 8K radius. So say you have targeted Facebook ads to that particular radius, you can really just attract people that are going to actually be using your storage. But what people do is they'll drive past the facility, right? And you will get drive-by people that find it, but they'll drive by it and then they'll go home and they'll Google you. So they're still coming through to you through your online portal, but they literally can, if they can see it, like that's why we have the main road frontage is so important, because it makes it so much easier. Like it literally just like 10x's the game, So instead of spending, $50,000 on marketing, you only have to spend 10 because you're already getting the customer and clientele you need to fill up just from the drive-by traffic, even though they're coming to you through Google anyway.
Yeah, that looks like a safe place where I'd want to put my things, my precious heirlooms. I would like to put it,
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
crisp.
Yeah, so there are 3 types of self-storage customers. There's a price conscious, there's a quality conscious, and there's also a looks conscious. So someone who is sensitive on price, they'll just go to the cheapest one. Someone who's sensitive on how it looks and how it feels, they'll basically change their opinion on how it looks and how it feels to where they'll actually store things. And those people and the high quality people will they will indefinitely pay more to go into those types of facilities rather than the price conscious people. So a lot of the time with self-storage facility, you have price conscious tenants and you want to raise the rates on them every, say, 9 to 12 months and get them out of your facility so you can get the quality conscious people into your facility after you've done all your refurbishments, because they're ultimately a better quality tenant and they'll pay more.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Cool. Let's jump into the number side of things, because
all right,
this is gonna be good.
So
you've got to click share screen again. For some reason, it booted it out.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Yeah. One question I've got for you, maybe, Steve, is like on a $4.6 million site, on a commercial site, like a normal stuff that you would buy, how many tenants would you typically see on a site?
That's a hard question with commercial, because you can have one huge one or you can have a multi-tenancy site. The multi-tenancy sites, it just depends. What's better, a Bunnings or one with 4 smaller tenants or one with 400 self-storage? They're all got their own nuances and pros and cons, and you just got to weigh up what the lease terms are, what the WALE is, what the build cost as well. So that's probably one of the differences. Andrew's got a better site value to build cost ratio, whereas a typical warehouse is going to be like a 50-50 type one. Whereas his might be 70% site, 30% build. So you just got to weigh up all those options.
Yeah, how long is a piece of string, I guess, with that question. Okay, cool. Let's do it. What have you got for us?
You can see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So this is the basic spreadsheet that I put together to figure out the opportunity of this facility. So as I mentioned before, I'm looking for underperforming businesses. And the way that I actually find these is I'll secret shop the actual area when I find a facility that I want to buy. So in a 10K radius, I'll find every facility in the area, and I'll literally call them and pretend to be a customer to gauge how full they are and get every single price they have for every single unit. Now, this is not easy to do, especially when they're full. So you have to have like a meditated script or, just a real story that you have to tell them. I mean, so, basically you have to be very vague on what you need, so then you can potentially ask for all different sizes. And then you can, what I actually do is I have a spreadsheet, and then I'll have every facility on that spreadsheet, and I'll plot out what they're charging per rate per square meter. And then when I've done that, I can understand who is the price leader and who is the cheapest in the market. And then if the facility that I want to buy is very, very low on that list, as in the cheapest, then there's an opportunity there with money left on the table to bring that facility up to quality and then have the rates increased to be paying the same street rate that everyone else is already paying. So it's a known. I'm not speculating to say, I think I could get that price. No, that's not what I'm doing. There's already a facility in that area or facilities that are probably 95 to almost 100% full, and they're charging that price, and they're the rates leader. And I am literally just finding undervalued rents, and I'm bringing it up to market, which creates huge value. And that's the power of commercial property and self-storage.
So let's go through this deal then. So $4.6 million purchase. Well, where do you start? Because there's a lot.
I guess you have to start here. So it's a $4.6 million purchase. It's in Adelaide, so there's no stamp duty, which is awesome. And these are all of the hard costs that you need for acquiring the property. So
no stamp duty in Adelaide.
You don't pay stamp duty on commercial property in Adelaide
or John, keep up.
So
oh God. I only buy resi in Adelaide.
ACT as well, Joe.
Oh,
yeah, so it's
God.
a pretty handy location to buy property in, because stamp duty can be really bloody expensive when you buy multi-million-dollar assets. So that's just awesome. So as I said, these are the kind of costs that you need. So the deposit that we're going to be putting in is 1.6 million. Building in pest is really expensive, 8,000. Town planner, bank foul, legal fees. The structures that you have to create for this kind of group deal syndication are really, really involved, because you have to be able to protect not only the business but the investors from themselves. So when, say, you're going into a group deal with, say 20 people or whatever the amount is, it's not really fair for one person to be able to crash and ruin that deal for everyone else. So you have to be able to protect people from themselves and protect the overall investment for everyone, because they didn't go into this deal to invest with Joe Blogs next to them, who's also invested. They're coming into the deal and they're trusting us with their money. So, when you're taking other people's money, it's a very, very, important role, and it needs to be taken very, very seriously. And, we're taking all of the steps to have, AFSL license on our board of directors, and doing all of the, the ASIC approved checks and things like that, that basically ensure that we're not, doing anything that we don't, anything wrong. And that's really important, because you can literally go to jail, for things like this. And I'm not interested in going to jail ever.
Yeah. So what Andrew's talking about here is he's created his own syndicate to be able to purchase this investment by getting other investors to invest with him. Is that a good way to explain it?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's a syndication business.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
we're going to be building a lot of these assets.
About the deal itself.
Yeah. Okay. So the gross revenue from this actual deal is 480,000 right off the bat. The net income is 354,000. So it's not too shabby off the bat. That actually equates to a ridiculous 7.7 cap rate. Like, to even fathom that in the last 2 years, Steve will protest to this as well. It's ridiculous. And I've actually included a lot of extra outgoings of my own in that aren't on the actual asset at the moment. So I've got a heaps of buffer on that to bring that down of contingencies. I mean, Steve, talk to me about a 7.71 cap rate.
Yeah, so just put in perspective, guys, getting anything with even a 5 in front of it in Adelaide is near impossible. You're talking like 4.5% cap rates. So you're starting to get up like close to double the cap rate.
Yeah, and like
what does that come down to? Buying well? Like, how'd you do this?
Well, it's a rundown facility. It wasn't probably marketed that well. In self-storage is a business, as I said. So it's been very, very hard to buy right with self-storage over the last 2 years, because we've been in a really hot market. And because it's not just a passive investment, you shouldn't be paying, 6 and 5 caps for this, because there is a business risk. It's a business. So you really need to have buffer in place. And, realistically, you should be paying 7+ for any kind of business. Like, think about if you're just buying a business, you're buying it on a 30% return. It's not like a 6% return for industrial or a retail asset that's a set and forget. The more passive the investment is, the sharper the yield usually is, because it's easy, it's hands off. But because this is hands on, and don't get me wrong, there are agents try and sell self-storage for really, really sharp yields. And that's why it's taken me so long to be able to get a deal, under contract. It's because I've had quite a few properties that I wanted to buy, but they just weren't, they were asking too much of a high price. So it didn't make sense. And with commercial property, if the numbers don't stack up, then you just move on.
So what about these other returns that you're looking at? And Steve, do you look at these similar returns when you're looking at other commercial properties? So we've got cap rate here at 7.71, cash over cash return at 11.52, pure cash over cash, and all in return. Is this similar to what you look into as well?
Yep. So I still look at that, and then you even look at the ROI with capital growth as well. So you forecast that, and that's just for long-term forecasting. But they're very typical commercial things. You look at yield, cash on cash, return on investment, return with capital growth.
Yeah, I mean, the real metric that is probably the most telling about commercial property is the cash on cash return, because that's telling you that how much cash are you getting back on the cash that you have invested, not from the bank, just you. So a good cash on cash return is about 10%. This is starting off at 11.52. So it's a ridiculous cash on cash return. And if you're looking at a pure cash on cash return, with capital that you're using to refurbish it, then it's a 7.2, which is still very, very, very good. And the all-in price of everything included to get a cap rate, a yield on it, is 6.47. Like that's a high cap rate in any kind of terms in the last 2 years, not just for all in. And that's every dollar that you're putting into it, including bank finance.
Wow, amazing. Okay, that's with your finance as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. So your what else are we looking at? What else is there? What else,
so
what
this is the tenancy schedule. So the self-storage facility, as it is right now, is returning $324,524 per year, right? And from my research and understanding the market and calling all of the other facilities, they're literally 37% under market rent right now across the board of their self-storage facility. So
that is a massive chunk of that business.
Yeah.
Like 320, and then the next one, Black Label, 65, next one, 25, 25, 25, 14. That is massive revenue.
Yeah, see, like these are commercial tenancies, right, with long-term leases. This is a month-to-month lease at scale, so this is where the actual value in the property is coming from. And these are just more like ancillary lines of revenue. And these are on the market too, so this particular MJ Mechanic, they had to move to the site in the last year and a half because they couldn't find anywhere else to go. So once you're in a place where if we want to keep them on, if there's no vacancy, the demand is so high and the supply is so low, then you can charge almost whatever you want because they can't go anywhere else and operate their business. I mean, you have to obviously, you're not going to just gouge them just for fun and take them out of business. But, supply and demand is a huge part of self-storage and investing,
So you're
in any
saying
kind of commercial asset.
You would potentially keep MJ Mechanics there if the rent outstripped the having a big unit for self-storage.
Well, that particular warehouse is not connected to the other warehouses, and it's actually in the path of the development. So we'd probably more than likely knock that warehouse down to go to a higher and better use. There are a couple of other units like Flawless Curtains and BJ Furniture. I can change the internal structure of that to self-storage.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what I'll do, we're getting close to time. So everyone throw your questions into the chat box and we will get to them as soon as we can. But yeah, I think we should still keep going through these numbers because it's looking pretty interesting. So the LVR is at 65%. Is that because the commercial lending's a little bit different?
Well,
at this scale?
65% is actually a huge LVR for self-storage. Usually, it's actually only up to about 50 to 55% because it's in the bank size. It's viewed as a specialty asset, and they're a little bit, not as confident on it. But in America, you can actually get up to a 90% lend on self-storage. So it's like ridiculous in America. But the interest rate obviously is also high. It wasn't this high when we first got this under contract because we've had this under contract for 6 months. That's how long it's taken for us to get it to this stage because of the nature of it being a mum and dad operation, and it wasn't ready to sell when we were purchasing it. So getting the information from it has been very, very difficult and time consuming. But these are the type of numbers for the actual property. So the loan is going to be $2,990,000. The repayments are around $640,000. The outgoings, as you can see, I've added on heaps of this. And what usually happens with self-storage facilities is they leave off the staff. So, a staff member is probably not going to cost me $80,000, but I always add in a huge buffer just to make sure. So as I was talking about before, Storm and software is a huge part of the self-storage facility, automating it. And these are all of the outgoings that you need to think about and have in your feasibility
So these are
when you're actually looking at
the new outgoings that you've got for these
Yeah.
guys.
They don't have this at the moment. So I've added on, $125,000 of outgoings. And as a rule of thumb, a self-storage facility that doesn't have technology and things like that will run at a 30% expense ratio. So if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, that's a 70% gross margin. And that's a really good margin for a business. We can probably talk about that if we have time later, but why margins are so important. But, that's part of the reason why I like self-storage as well. It's like you're not running off like a 15-10% margin. It's 70% margin,
So what's the margin with this new software and everything that you put into it?
Well, no, there's there's not margin with the software. It just, the larger that you get.
No, I mean, like the old way is 30%. What's the new way that you get?
Well,
or did you say the new way is 30%?
It keeps on reducing. So if you have it's a fixed cost, right? So that's Storm software is 3,400, whether I have, 100 units or 200, 300, 400 units. It's still the same cost. I think there is a little bit of an escalation in it, but it's nothing like, to even talk about. So the cost of running a business, a self-storage business, are very fixed, like the staffing, accountancy fees, security, insurance. But if you can build it up and keep on adding in more net lettable area, that's when the expense ratio goes down and your profit margins go up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Joe, do you want to pop up? There's a good question about what insurances you need for self-storage. It's about 5 or 6 up. Maybe pop that up because we just mentioned insurance then, and Andrew can give us a run through of the types of insurances you need for building, landlord, indemnity, all that type of stuff.
Is it this one?
Yeah, you definitely need all of those. It's a good idea to have that. Business insurance is something that you actually need for it as well. So in a self-storage facility, a great value add is actually offering insurance to the storers. So you take out a policy and then they pay you, it's like they pay $1 extra a month and they get $100 worth of cover. They pay $2, and it's like a sliding scale like that. And like usually nothing happens. So it's just money for jam that you're getting. And as I've said multiple times, every dollar counts in self-storage. So there's so many different little value add ways that you can add in extra lines of revenue, and insurance is definitely one of them. Is there anything other questions?
We'll get to them after that, but that's good.
Yeah, that's awesome that you can be your own insurance provider. Like you can be your own insurance company.
Yeah. So the other stuff here we've got is the refurbishment. So these are all of the potential big ticket items that we might be refurbishing. And these are really, really overinflated numbers to bringing this self-storage facility, up to a high grade. So you can see here, I've got unexpected cost of 300,000. Like that's just like ridiculously high, but I'm not leaving anything to chance with this kind of venture. I'd rather have a lot more money in the kitty waiting for this just in case, rather than cutting it pretty thin to make the numbers look even prettier and falling short. Over here you can see this is my rates comparison. There's a lot of work. There's probably about a week to 3 weeks of work to go into this to be able to give you these numbers. So you can see I've got the leading competitor rates here, right? This is the rate per square meter, and the difference between commercial assets and self-storage is that across the board, usually you bring self-storage back to the dollar or the cent, because you're actually looking at it like you're renting it out for a day, not a year. So the time that duration that you're actually getting for rent is different. So you actually bring it back to your 365 rate per square meter. So the golden rule is like getting your rate per square meter to $1 is huge. So you can see that these rate leaders comparison, this is National Storage, they're at 98 cents. Our rates are $100 less per unit per month than theirs. but theirs is exactly the same as ours. So it's just money left on the table that I can just basically go in, I can increase the rates on the first day, and I can create millions of dollars of value in one foul swoop. And you might say, "Oh, what did people leave?" I hope they do, because then I can charge the full rate and get even more value. So I'm kicking out the price conscious people, and I'm getting in the quality conscious people in there.
The point you made, Andrew, earlier on is even if you're the same price as the more prestigious one, you're not likely to go hire a ute, move all the stuff, and spend a whole day doing it to save yourself $10 a month. You're just not going to do it.
That's right. That's right.
I imagine it's also sort of like gym memberships in as well. Once it's coming out of your account, it's just set and forgotten. They just set coming up, but they don't actually consciously think about it all day, every day.
Yeah, ideally you want them to come and put their stuff there and then forget about you and not think about you again. But all the payments are done online. They're automatic payments, direct debit. So it's a very, very easy hands-off kind of business with a little bit of an aspect of, one, maybe 1.5 staff. The competition on the area, this took me a long time to figure out. I don't see much vacancy there. Because in general, in South Australia, there's a huge undersupply of self-storage, and the demand is wildly high. So you can see, if I've got a unit right, it doesn't matter what it costs. If you have a demand and you need to store something, you're going to pay whatever I ask. Because if you have to move it, you're moving out of house, you're moving overseas, you need to put it somewhere. Say I'm charging $50 over the market rate. Well, I mean, it's either that or you throw the item out, So
I imagine that occupancy rate as well is a very good indicator for growth, for rental growth out of the.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Did you look into future space and talk with town planners or anything like that about other potential sites that might be popping up?
Yeah, that's right. So that's a big part of it, is finding out the future supply, and that's it's called zombie storage, where it comes out of the ground and it comes and gets you and you don't know about it. So you do have to understand what's going on. There was a recent development with Kennards. They're building they have a site there in the main part of Adelaide, and they've partnered with Tim Gunner to build a really, really beautiful industrial retail asset with a mix of self-storage. But the nature of self-storage is very localized. So if it's not in a 10K radius or even an 8K radius of my facility, then it's almost it's a different market.
It's not even competition.
It's not competition. So you could literally go 10Ks down the road. You can have one market store you're in, and it's really low supply, high demand. And then you could go to another market, and there could be no demand at all because of the difference in, living, retail, residential area. There might be not a lot of people in that area. So one of the parts about this particular site as well is that I can see that we're in the path of progress. So Adelaide is creeping towards Gawler. Gawler is creeping towards Adelaide. And in the next 5 to 10 years, I believe that they'll connect. So there's you literally go onto realestate.com and you'll flick through the area, and you'll literally see hundreds and hundreds of house and land packages that have been subdivided, and they're selling house and land in the area, in the vicinity. That's a good sign, so you're getting it.
Yeah, I know this. I've actually bought a commercial property in the main street of Gawler, a retail. There is so much retail development going on there as well, which is obviously going to bring people and population growth.
Yes, I do know that property as well, Stevie. It was a nice property, wasn't it?
Wasn't
self-storage, was it?
No.
I think Andrew sent you the link on that one.
So, I mean, I'll just go through the phases because there are quite a few phases, and just to give everyone an understanding. This is the current revenue, and this is at 100% occupancy. So this is the current revenue. You can see it's exactly what I set up there. So realistically, this property is probably being traded at a 7.75 right now if we put it back on the market. So you could theoretically say that we have probably about $130,000 of equity if, you know, you want to speculate. I don't like to speculate at all. So I'm not even going to chalk that up to anything. But the next phase that we're doing is just implementing a professional business operation and raising rents. So you can see the difference in the cash flow. I went from 190,000 to just raising the rates and putting in a professional operation, raising the rates like on average around 30 to 37%. My cash flow has gone up to 315,000. Now the property at a 7.5 cap is worth 6.4 million. Like,
so all you've done is increase
I
the
better say that
rents.
again. Like that's ridiculous. That all I've done is I've walked in on day one. The first 3 months, I've increased the rates. I've got people out. I've got high-paying tenants in. I've improved the operations, and I've made $2 million.
Yeah.
I don't know of any other asset that you can do that so easily. I mean, there are different assets out there like caravan parks and motels and stuff like that that do have that opportunity, but not like this. And this is the opportunity that I'm going after.
Yeah, probably a big difference with Resi. So Resi can increase your cash flow, but that doesn't necessarily translate to increased capital growth or extra value for the property. With commercial, it does. So that's why you can win
that's
on
right.
once there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I don't like about commercial property, and it's the only thing that's really speculative, is what cap rate will it trade at? And it really depends on who's buying it. So a REIT might pay a 6 cap because they actually get paid for pushing out money and deploying cash. So they have to buy it. They like to buy things that have already done. They just walk in and they actually just do the same thing. They increase the rates. They don't want to develop. They don't want to muck around with that too much. Whereas if you're selling this to say me, I need it to be around here because it's a business operational risk and I need fat on the bone, you know, a meat on the bone to be actually go into it. So that's just the first 3 months, guys. I mean, the next
2 million in
phase,
the first 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, like, and we're not, this is buy and hold play. We're not actually going to be selling it, but to refinance and take out and then redevelop is a really important piece of the commercial, you know, aspect. And what I've actually found from interviewing many professional commercial investors and talking to a lot of people is that the difference between your mum and dad investor and a professional investor is they don't rely on the market to make them. They go in, they find an opportunity, and they have a clear way to add value to it. They're forcing appreciation. They're not waiting for the market to make you. Like, you don't hear of any of the big investors like Grant Cardone, Sam Zell, as I said before. It's like, oh, you know, we'll wait 10 years and hopefully. Like, they don't hope. There's no wishing, no speculating in commercial property. You're not relying on capital growth. You're investing for cash flow first and appreciation second. If you get that capital growth, that's great, but it's just cherry on the top. It doesn't make you.
So what is this thing's final
difference.
form? What does this look like? And then we'll jump into the questions that
okay, no worries.
A couple of questions
so
left.
After all said and done, you know, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, 60 months, 72 months, you know, we've built up quite a few lines of revenue here where we've built up, you know, level 1 car yard, you know, the car yards at the section of the site. We've built up, you know, multi-story buildings, the rear, like we said in that plan. The cash flow is now 1.3 million cash flow. That's in pocket. You know, the net income is 1.5. The actual yield on this is 33.24%. And depending on who you're selling it to, makes a huge difference in value. So if you're selling it to someone like a mum and dad operator, which you probably wouldn't be at that point because it's a huge facility with a lot of NLA, you know, you're looking at circa 20. But, you know, it really depends who you're selling it to. So this could be a circa $25 million asset, you know, when it's all said and done in, say, 6 years. And that's just probably something that you can refinance and use to keep on building the business, the portfolio. But having that option's pretty cool. Like, there's the nice numbers. They're pretty.
I want to point out, well, like, Andrew doesn't fluff numbers. He's the opposite. He's really, really conservative. And when he writes the numbers, it's pretty much right. And you didn't just fall into this deal. Like you spoke with tens of experts and hundreds of hours looking, and then you can just see from this spreadsheet alone, there's hundreds of hours.
Yeah, like unexpected cost 300,000. That's like, it's so over the top, it's laughable. You know, these numbers aren't. I mean, I'll give you an example. You know, I'm doing this actual calculation on 70 cents per square meter for our 6x3s that we'll be actually developing. See that number there, 70 cents, and the 3x3 units at 80 cents. Well, if we go back up to what the competition is charging today, right now, they're charging 98 cents for their 3x3s and 98 cents for their 6x3s. You know, so I'm drastically I'm drastically undervaluing it to make sure that there's no surprises and mistakes later on. I mean, things happen, like things change. You know, I'm sure there'll be from now in 6 years, there's going to be so many different things that happen in the world. But if I can build in enough fat and there's so much cash flow, no one's ever gone bankrupt with this amount of cash flow coming in every single month. Like, you're not going to lose this property. And that's, you know,
laughing at your face, Joe, your mind is exploding.
Well, it's just absurd that you've just cut a third of your income intentionally, and then you've got 300K extra expenses, and you've got $15 million worth of equity just sat there. It is absolutely more 20 million if you want to really stretch it out. Okay, cool. We'll jump off this. We'll jump off the spreadsheet now.
John, there are heaps of development costs as well. Like, this is like an $8 million development, so there has to be factored in as well. So it's not just like collecting 20 million.
Yeah, it's no such thing as a free lunch, and you've definitely worked on this one. What would suck is if the deal didn't go through.
That would definitely suck.
You've been
Make it happen.
Six months now, Andrew.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're counting the time we've just been under contract, it's 6 months. But if you're counting the time that I first found the deal with the actual owner of the property or the owners, you know, you're looking at 9 to 10 months. So that happens in commercial property. Deals come in, come out. Like, it's a waiting game.
I get sales calls all the time. People saying, "Oh, I want to buy self-storage. It's easy. It's lots of small tenants who buy and forget." And I'm like, "No, you have no idea. There's way more to it than that."
Yeah, I mean, you can do it. You can do it in a passive way, putting a real estate agent in. But you know, if you want to, you're doing it for cash. You're doing it to make money. It's not the best way. So
yeah, the real estate agents will eat a lot of your fat as well, because they are shorter leases and they're releasing fees. You're looking at what, 20%, Andrew? I imagine.
Yeah, it's at least like 10 to 20%. And the thing is as well that our real estate agent's not doing dynamic pricing. They're doing the static price. So they're just going to charge one thing. They don't care about your business. They just care that it's full, and they don't want to do anything. But we better jump into questions, Joe.
Let's do it. Okay. So how easy / difficult is the process to set up buying from land and building the storage facility? What's the main thing to consider when buying the land and also when building the storage units? What companies should go to and engage the building? Maybe ignore the companies part, but yeah, well, how would you say to go about building these things and buying the land?
It's relatively easy. The first thing you need to do is just you have to understand the zoning. Is the zoning permitted in that? Is it permitted in that zone? Is that use? That's the biggest thing. You know, you can try and change zoning, but if you're going up against council, you know, you're probably going to lose. You know, so you've really got to think about and have a town planner or someone who knows what they're doing. Particularly, like I'm all over New South Wales planning, because that's what I've been looking at for the last 6 years, and I understand how it's written. I can look at a zone and I can go to the exact the LEAP, the local environmental plan, and I can figure out exactly if it's permissible. And that's a value add as well for commercial property. So if you can understand what operator can actually, or what use is a higher rate use, and say you've got an industrial use and you can turn it into a retail use that's got a higher rate per square meter, then you can add value to that property by just knowing the planning and the potential change of use. So it is easy. And also the difference between self-storage and like building an industrial asset is it's a lot cheaper. So you can do it on the cheap, where you're doing tin drive-up sheds. So, you know, they're not hard to put up. You just need a concrete slab, a little bit of earthworks and stuff like that. But there's one toilet usually on site. There's not much else. Like
Not much plumbing.
It's pretty simple. It's not like
there's no heating you have to worry about.
No heating. No, in America they have refrigerated and conditioned units, but in Australia it's not that that common. One thing that actually I thought was actually funny was Kennards offer gun storage in Australia. I mean, that's like pretty crazy. Like I wouldn't have expected that in Australia. I could understand in America, but not in Australia. So
out there in Gawler, you never know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew. I actually find most of the time storage is permitted, and it's normally the other ones that aren't. Because I'm always looking to buy like an industrial zoned one, and I see that I'm like, oh bugger, it's only storage. Like that's all I can do, and I walk away from it. So I think storage is more common.
So one of the things is competition. Like, why don't I just open up? There's probably another lot of land right opposite yours. Why don't I just spend the 8 million and beat you to it?
I just need to oppose Steve's question. I'd probably not agree with that statement, because there's different types of storage. There's storage premises and there's also storage units. So you have to be careful on the wording of it, because especially in the New South Wales planning, there's different types of self-storage uses, and you can use it more than likely as an industrial warehouse rather than an actual individual storage premises. But I'm really only really premising that off looking at the planning for New South Wales. Sorry, Joe, can you say that question again, mate?
I was going to say, Joe, that might flow into nicely. Someone's got a question about why can't you just buy mixed zoning land? So one of the last ones, and just chuck some basically storage on it or shipping containers.
Yeah, well, you definitely can put shipping containers on it, but you still need to be allowed to run a self-storage business on it. So if you're doing it all shipping containers, it's not just like you can just throw it in there and then start operating. You still need council approval to do the actual business, but not develop and put the movable object on there.
Okay.
Right. Okay, that's a big distinction. So you just can't go out there and do it. Really, you do need to make sure if you are running that business.
Yeah, I mean,
but once it's approved, then you can keep creating more and more of those things. But what you're most likely best off doing is do what you're doing, go through the DA and get a more affordable option. So rather than, spending, I don't know, however much it is for one shipping container, get 3 of the other units instead for the same price.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do if you say you're going to do 5 containers and it was a real, behind the scenes kind of operation, and you weren't advertising it, you could get away with it. But if you're starting to do 100 containers on the site, and the next house along is a residential property, there are going to be complaints. People are coming in and out of these storage facilities at all times. So the actual local council don't want to disturb the other people or the other tenancies around there. So you can't just throw it up anywhere. It definitely has to be the right zoning and permissible use. And a lot of self-storage facilities have a time that they're only allowed to have people on site as well to counter that. Yeah.
There's a good question that came in here. Are there storage businesses whereby a buyer can buy 1 unit, example $50,000, then pay a management fee for the rental return, like a service department?
Yes, there are, but my advice would be that's a terrible idea, because you get all of the bad parts of self-storage, which is the month-to-month lease, and it's it's not at scale, so buying that particular asset, if that goes vacant, then who's the next in line to pay the mortgage? Remember my conga line that I was talking about? I am. So I need about 100 units, or at least 80 units in a line in front of me, so I'm not the one paying the bills. And remember, if you're letting someone else manage it for you, are they managing it in your best interest? Like, they're not doing dynamic pricing. They're just really only getting a clip of the rental. So I would suggest that that's probably a bad idea, and you'd be better off talking to Steve to set you up with something long term on a 12 to 24 month lease, like an industrial warehouse.
Yeah, and
more
then
uses,
this comes
way more uses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this comes back to this question here. What volume does Andrew see at break-even point? So you were talking, maybe it's not necessarily a break-even point, but what's your minimum number of units that you would go for when purchasing a self-storage? Like, where would you say is the
I think they're talking about occupancy levels, Joe. So what occupancy level of the whole storage facility will the cash flow become break-even?
Well, that really depends on how much the rates are being charged per unit. So rates are different everywhere across Australia. No one market is the same. So on average worldwide, 88% is the industry average of occupancy. And in the last 5 years, it's been actually running at over 90% or 92% actually. So it's actually quite interesting how there's been a real ramp up in self-storage occupancy.
In terms of entering their break-even point, though, the two things that's going to come down to is obviously the rent that you're receiving, and that's going to be the percentage of the storage facility versus the cap rate that you bought it at versus the interest rates and LVR you're having, because that's how you calculate your cash flow. So all three of those factors, you just need to marry up. Most of the time it's 7% cap rates with interest rates where they're at now. Anything below about 60% occupancy starts going in the red zone.
Yeah, it really depends what cap rate you're originally buying it at. So we're buying it at 7.7. It doesn't matter if the actual loan interest rate goes to 8%. I can still cover that debt. And I've got a interest rate analyzer that I've built just to be able to stress test that. So, I'm not leaving anything to chance because, the interest rate on the loan at the moment is 5.5%, right? That's pretty high.
Yeah.
But we're buying it at such a great yield. It doesn't matter.
One of the points to notice, I get asked this with commercial a lot, is saying, but if interest rates are 6% and you're paying a 6% cap, what's the point? I'm not getting any money. But you're only paying the 6% on the 65% debt. So you're actually still in front because you don't have any of the outgoings. Self-storage obviously a bit different, but it's a generic industrial warehouse. You're still ahead. It's still quite attractive if you actually look at the numbers.
Yeah, literally, I actually looked at it today and I was just mucking around with it, and I put in a $300,000 warehouse that was probably returning about $20,000. And even if you're still getting up to 8%, because exactly what Steve said, you're only paying interest on the debt that you have, not the full price of value of the property. So if you're getting a 6% return on the property, it's not equivalent to the 6% interest rate that you're paying. They're different numbers that you're actually paying interest on. So that's where people probably think, it's 6% interest rate, I can't afford it. But when you actually look at the numbers, you're still $10,000, $14,000 in front, even if interest rates go up, 8%, which I don't think they will, but anything could happen.
Yeah. And what is that minimum that you would go for a storage unit? What would be the lowest value, value or amount of units that you would look at?
Yeah. So it's not the amount of units, it's how much it's returning. So I don't care really how many units there are in the facility. If I'm getting $800, a really high return per unit, and the revenue is over, say, $100,000, then it could be worth it. But I need to go back to am I automating this facility or am I having a manager on site? They're two different plays. If it's under $100,000, I need to 100% automate this and not have a manager on site. That removes my box shop. Not completely, because you could definitely sell ancillary products online when they're renting the unit. But it eliminates that, salesy kind of upsell while they're there. But typically, I'd be looking at, for my particular business, Commercial Property Capital, we'd be looking at deals, similar to this, where you're getting 350,000 plus in revenue, which is realistically not that much for a self-storage facility that's run well.
Amazing. Well, we have gone over time, as always. You get interesting questions from interesting people. You get interesting people that brings interesting questions. Is there anything that we haven't covered off on the self-storage side of things that you think's well worth mentioning?
I think we've covered a fair bit. There's still a lot more to dig into. So please don't run out there and try and buy a self-storage facility straight away. I doubt you'll be able to find one. One of the things about self-storage is there's not many to buy. If an asset is there's not many actual supply to buy, it's probably a good sign that they're a pretty good asset. So it's been very difficult to find deals in the last 2 years, and that's when you're doing things like I'm calling up the owner and asking them like, hey, my name's Andrew. I'm really interested in your facility. Can I have a coffee with you? And getting in the path of potentially when they want to sell it, because at the end of the day, it's a business, and eventually people need to retire. They don't need to they don't need to run a business for the rest of their life. So eventually they need to sell it. And if I'm the first person they think of, then I can get that opportunity before anyone else.
One of the funny things I want to mention, Joe, we mentioned this the other day, and Andrew said it to me, is a caravan site is effectively self-storage for humans on a shorter time frame. And I'm just like, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely is. So like same with a motel, manufactured home estates. I really like caravan parks that have the permissible use of turning them into a manufactured home estate. And if people don't know what they are, it's basically a land play, and people come and put a demountable manufactured house on your land, and they pay you a lot rent. So you don't have to pay any expenses for anything breaks. If the toilet breaks, they pay it themselves, and it's just a lot rent. So if someone drops a house onto your land, it could cost the house could cost $90,000. It'll cost at least $15,000-$20,000 to probably drop it and connect all the water and everything. And then they're not moving that anytime soon. So it's a very, very good sticky tenant as well. The reason that I haven't dived right into caravan parks, motels, because I believe the time horizon of opportunity is a lot greater with that asset. So if you look on any of the listing portals right now, you'll be able to find hundreds of motels, caravan parks for sale. And there's a huge opportunity there, a huge opportunity. But the window for self-storage is probably the next 10 to 20 years where it starts really consolidating. So I'm going after the one that has the shortest time frame now to get in. And then after that, the opportunity will change and the strategy will change. And I wouldn't be surprised if I move heavily into the caravan park manufactured home estate asset, because there's a real opportunity there. If you could go in underperforming business and take it to the moon.
Automate the crap out of it. So how would people learn more about this whole world? What's the best way to get started, and how can they get connected with yourself as well, Andrew?
Yeah, well, they can jump onto my website, www.andrewbean.com.au. We're putting together a new website at the moment. But you can listen to my podcast. I'm actually going to be basically documenting everything about this actual development and the actual purchase through a new podcast that'll be solely on self-storage. So definitely listen to that, through the Commercial Property Show. And there are quite a few good resources as well, just YouTube self-storage. There's a lot of good stuff. But, I'm happy to talk to anyone and help anyone in their journey in self-storage. If they just want to have a chat, I'm always available.
Awesome.
Yeah, this has been an absolute eye-opening session of something that I had very little understanding on. So thank you very much for sharing it. And thank you, Steve, for being a co-host here and supporting me with the intelligent questions for us. But I think a good place to get started as well would be the podcast that the two of you guys have together, which was called Steve?
Commercial Property Investing Explained.
And that's going to give you a good foundational understanding of how commercial property works, because there's so many tie-ins with what you've got here with the self-storage that it's just a great leaping off point.
Let me say this, Joe. When we're on it, every 5 minutes, Andrew would then go off on a tangent and talk about self-storage for about 40 minutes. I'm like, it's my show, damn it. Let me have my moment.
Yeah. He literally did tell me to keep it short with self-storage. This is commercial property, mate.
Yeah, well, that's why this session went for so long, because we said no, this is purely self-storage. Amazing. Okay, gents, I think that is a wrap. That was absolutely sensational. Reach out to Andrew with I mean, what do you want people to reach out with you? Like, what do you want people to?
I've got my new website. I'm rebranding. My original website was Develop a Life. I'm rebranding that into my own name. And there's actually I've set up, it's a DIY cash flow kit, which has really the crux of what you need to start using, like spreadsheet wise, to help you to start crunching the numbers in commercial property and not getting yourself in trouble. So that's online right now. My full website will be coming soon, with lots more commercial services. Basically not a buyer's agent, just helping people with advice on deals, crunching the numbers, finding deals for them, talking about self-storage. So, that's going to be up in, the next 2 weeks. But, if you want to grab a free commercial DIY cash flow kit, jump on there. I put quite a few hours into building them up for everyone. So
Andrew Bean.
I was going to say, he's also got commercial property data, which is a really useful data website. So it tracks, like, around Australia, what the yields and cap rates are doing, what the vacancy periods are doing in different asset classes and regions where you can't get that data in commercial. The only way you get that data is literally by clicking through Real Commercial and CoreLogic and literally typing it in. And Andrew's got people that do that every single month. So if you want up-to-date data, CP data.
CP data, it is. Amazing. Well, you'll pop it in the questions after this. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you very much, Steve. Let's go buy a storage property.
I've converted him.
In 9 months' time.
Yeah. See you later. Thanks, guys.
See you guys. Thanks.
There you go.